And we are live for another Friday night hashtag TQIF lineup. We're going to start the night off with a live podcast talking all about the latest episode of Star Trek that happens to be Star Trek Prodigy's Time Amok. And then later on tonight, there will be some late night fun live on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel. So we want to make sure everyone knows to stick around for that later. But I do see people are watching. I think me and Brian are ready to go. So we're just going to go ahead and kick off the show right now. I'm Fathery.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 174th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new, and proud members of the TrekSphere network. And tonight, we are talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episode 8, Time Amok, written by Nikhil S. Jayaram, maybe I got it right, and directed by Olga, Ulanova, and sung Shin. So Time Amok, not to be confused with Amok Time. Very different episode, but I got Brian here to chat with.
Do you think the titles are deliberately referential just because they're hoping to trick kids into watching adult Star Trek when they look up the wrong title?
I think it's just an in joke for the fans. But I guess it's going to be a recurring thing, between last week and this week. So expect more of it down the road.
I'm waiting for their spoof on the butcher cries not for the or whatever. Yeah,
the butcher cries not for the butcher's knife cries not for the lamb's cry. Yeah, I think is it still the longest episode title? It seems like it might have been usurped, but I can't remember what would have topped that. If you can correct me on that, please comment and let me know. However, in the meantime, we have this episode to talk about, and before we get started on that, though, I just want to remind everyone about the big news we had this week. Couple of big news items. Today we had some pretty big stuff, but even before that, there was an announcement earlier in the week with the premiere dates for upcoming Star Trek shows, specifically Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But we also got a lot of information on renewals for additional seasons, stuff that I think a lot of us were pretty much already assumed was a safe bet. The word on the street was that production was about to start on Strange New Worlds Season 2 here at the beginning of February. But now we have the official word from Paramount Plus that yes, Strange New World is getting a second season. Discovery is getting a fifth season. Lower Decks is getting a fourth season. We still got season 3 of that later this year. So very, very exciting. I think we are in the golden age of Star Trek, or maybe the second golden age, if you want to consider the Berman years, the original golden age, or but yeah,
I think you have to consider the Berman era the first golden age. I just don't see how you can not say that when they had that much Star Trek being made and that much merchandising, and they were on the cover of Time magazine.
But I think those days have returned. I keep saying this feels like a return to normalcy for me.
I'd agree. This is a second golden age. I don't know if we've quite scored the cover of Time yet, but
But yeah, I kind of predicted a couple of weeks ago how I thought that things might fall into alignment this year as far as future release dates. I'm very surprised to see the amount of overlap between Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. There's actually 3 weeks we're going to be getting both those episodes on the same week, the same day, no less. So that's going to be crazy. We're going to be doing double duty those weeks, covering both Discovery and Picard at the same time. That starts on March 3rd. Then we're going to have a Strange New World season premiere drop the same day as the Picard season finale on May 5th. So that's going to be a huge night. Happy Cinco de Mayo to you. And then, later in the year, probably in August, we'll have season 3 of Lower Decks and 10 new Prodigy episodes at some point in the year. So really, really cool. I was happy to have all of that confirmed. And Brian, I hope that we can not go crazy having to watch and analyze and take notes and everything we have to do to cover all this Star Trek. But it's going to be a lot of work. But I think it'll be a lot of fun.
It is going to be a lot of work because those will probably be the episodes of Discovery that we have the most to say about. And I'm sure Picard looks like it's going to be setting up some very high concept stuff at the front end that we're going to have a lot to say about. And they're both 1 hour or, 40 something minute dramas. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to chew on for 3 weeks.
Anything in particular that you're the most looking forward to?
I mean, I guess Discovery's my fave, so I'm still looking forward to seeing the second half of this season of Discovery the most. But Picard is definitely the runner-up. Is the thing I'm second most excited about is seeing Picard. So those 3 weeks are really going to be giving me everything I want. Perhaps more than I want. But those are probably the two big things. And I am intensely curious about Strange New Worlds and wondering how that's going to shake out too. So,
yeah, both the second season of Picard and the first season of Strange New Worlds are things I've been looking forward to for literally years now. Picard season 1 was 2 years ago. Discovery season 2 was 3 years ago, and we were all demanding a Pike show, immediately after that. So yeah, I've literally been waiting on both of those for years. So I'm looking forward to both of them. And speaking of Picard, tomorrow at 3:30 Central, for those of you watching this live Friday night, you can come back tomorrow afternoon, 3:30 p.m. Central. We will be doing a live discussion on the new Picard trailer that dropped today. So let's save our thoughts on that till tomorrow. If you're listening to the podcast, then you can find that on the Tex-Trek YouTube channel. And we'll do a detailed analysis of the new trailer. But let's switch gears back to, I guess we're still in the Gamma Quadrant, to the kids from the Delta Quadrant and talk about this Prodigy episode. I'm just going to recap it real quick by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers. The official synopsis reads, when the U.S.S. Protostar is fractured in time by an anomaly, Hologram Janeway must synchronize the disjointed crew and save their ship before it destructs. And yeah, that's pretty much sums up the entire episode. Things are complicated when a Dreadnought copy, 3D printed Dreadnought 2.0, comes onto the ship and causes some trouble. But yeah, each kid is in their own different time phase, and they have to work together, with Janeway being the connective tissue between them, and eventually Rock Talk comes through in the clutch, and they save the ship. Now, Brian, let's each give kind of our opening statement to express our broad impressions of this episode, and then we'll talk about it in detail. I'll go ahead and go first. But yeah, this is a timey-wimey episode, to borrow a phrase from Doctor Who, but it's just so accurate for some of these sci-fi concepts. Yeah, timey-wimey. But yeah, this is a good timey-wimey thing. I love timey-wimey type science fiction. I think Star Trek explores strange temporal anomaly stuff probably more often and better than any other franchise. I just referenced Doctor Who, but Doctor Who doesn't really do the timey-wimey stuff, they normally just time travel is just the device to explain, the setting of the episode.
I mean, except when Moffat's in charge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and Newer Who, that episode in particular, Blink, being a great example of. But Blink is really more of a Star Trek type story. The weird temporal anomaly. But I love that stuff, and I love time travel, and anytime they're playing around with time. Ever since I was a kid, I don't know, I really dig it. Mild complaints here, and maybe not even like a really true complaint anymore in retrospect, because I didn't mind as much by the end of the episode and on rewatch. But the kids were actually a little bit more annoying, more like kiddish in a bad way in this episode. Rock Talk has, she's a little temper tantrumy, and there's a couple times when Dow, who I've been liking his arc, but I got a little annoyed with him when he wouldn't put down his Game Boy in front of Janeway. I'm typically more tolerant of those types of moments in the show, so I don't know why these stuck out to me for some reason, but
I mean, Rock Talk was deliberately designed to set up a juxtaposition
right.
about what's going on at the end.
So, right, so they can make her more mature by the end. Yeah.
Yeah, so I totally get leaning into that on the front end of the episode.
Yeah, that's why I kind of accepted it. And the rules of the time displacement, the anomaly, whatever, like they don't make a ton of sense to me, but they operate on the same way that things would often go down on Voyager or Discovery, when they're doing timey-wimey stuff. So I can forgive it, if I accepted it on those other shows. I do think, Brian, that we actually might be able to kind of explain how it works. I have my own ideas, at least. Mm-hmm. And even they're not 100% foolproof, but I think they do a decent job explaining things. But I don't know. I'm sure you have thoughts on that as well that we'll get into. But the saving grace of this episode, though, was the heart. The emotional beats really hit when they were supposed to hit. I was sad when I was supposed to be sad. I was happy at the ending, at the big happy ending. And while the timey-wimey stuff could have been a bit more logical, I still mostly like how they explained it when they were trying to explain it. And just more often than not, I'm going to like your weird time-bending sci-fi stories in my Star Trek. So that's pretty much always fun for me, and I had fun here. Brian, what about you?
I love the idea of the crew our heroes only being able to save the day if they work together, despite being in literally different frames of time, where they're on not only just on different versions of the ship, but time is literally flowing differently, cutting them off and disconnecting their ability to understand what's happening to everyone else and confusing matters. And so I love the idea that they still find a way to do the teamwork thing and work together. That said, I don't know if this episode quite managed to pull that big idea, which they were clearly reaching for, and I applaud them for going big. But I don't know if they quite pulled it together, or if they did, they left a lot of money on the table that they could have made use of. Like, I think we don't really cut back and forth between the different time frames much. We kind of just visit them one at a time, and then we're mostly done with them. And I thought that was a lost opportunity to be zipping back and forth between them and having the crew interacting more, using Janeway as a messenger. And it would have been nice if there was some other, if the ships weren't completely separate, like there was some way they could, do more than exchange information. But if done properly, just information exchange could be fun. Like they could have, like if they had said, Gwen had said, "Oh, hey, we just 3D printed a Dreadnought. You should check your 3D printer and go switch it off now." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And so they go and switch it off before it becomes a problem. And you see a little more feedback in here between this temporal architecture that we put together. I feel like if they'd brought in Steve Moffat to do a quick rewrite, it would have been perfect. But I applaud them for what they're trying to do, and it mostly gets there. It just, I've seen this stuff done better enough that it was vaguely irksome that they didn't quite get it as sharp as they could have. And there's some stuff like, I guess they're out of phase like Geordi and Rose, so they're all running around on the same ship, but they can't see each other. But why are only the crew members out of phase and not like the hardware on the ship is all in the same phase? I didn't quite understand why only the crew got knocked out into different phases. So, and I don't know that if you'd plotted it out really carefully, you could have done something like that. What is it? Wink of the Eye, the TOS episode where Kirk gets hyper accelerated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Wink of an Eye, and then Blink of an Eye is the Voyager episode.
Okay.
I think. Or is it the other way around? I think Wink of the Eye is the OG.
Okay. So anyway, there were some wonderful scenes of everyone being frozen while Kirk walks around the ship and stuff, and they could have, depending, a rewrite of this could have had some of that, and that might have been fun. I don't know. You'd have to. It certainly makes the logistics a little harder if everyone's attached to the same time frame, and like, here in this version you can have Jacob Pog blow up, and yet everyone else is still not out of time yet. Anyway, it was fun. I like the idea behind it. I like that we've got our baptism by timey in the streams of time that every Star Trek show must go and do.
Except Lower Decks hasn't done it yet. They haven't done weird time stuff. Have they? I don't think they have.
Yeah.
Picard is about to get into that hardcore.
Yeah. So Picard always feels like he's already got that stamp in his passport.
But
TNG.
Everyone else, I doubt Elnor or Soji, has. But let's just go ahead and get into the episode breakdown and talk about it beat by beat. And I think I don't know. I will attempt to suggest some explanations for some of these things because I had the same questions, Brian.
Okay.
But there's a couple of little things in the dialogue that might help, although they might present their own issues.
I was not able to come up with much to rationalize it. I just kind of felt like it was a Voyager episode where you just let them have their weirdness for the week and enjoy wherever it takes you, as opposed to trying to say, how does this actually make sense? But so I suppose in that sense, it felt very much like a Voyager episode.
Yeah, like a relativity or the one where Chakotay is on the ship and it's different time periods. Is that shattered or fractured? I forget that one too, but I kept thinking of that episode for multiple reasons. But yeah, there's also some time travel stuff in those episodes that I feel make as little sense as this, or perhaps less. And even Discovery's magic to make the sanest man go mad, left me with a few questions. But let's talk about the opening of this episode before we get into the timey-wiminess brought on by the Tachyon storm. Let's talk about the holodeck training and then the little bit of the diviner we get in this episode. But the classic riddle of getting a chicken, fox, and bag of grain across a river, and you can only take one in the boat. It's actually like an ancient riddle that goes back to like over 1,000 years ago. But
it was old. I didn't realize it was that old. But wow.
The secret is that you have to take the chicken on the first, third, and final crossing, and that way it's never alone. The chicken's the key. You can't have the chicken alone with the fox or the grain. But the CGI on those scenes looked really good. And I thought it was interesting that Janeway started the episode with a training officer's log. And the line from Jankum about Jankum's hungry, let's eat the fox. And then Dow's line, hey, I'm going to listen to my crew. Spock taught me to think of the good of the many, so I'm going to reconfirm that to the audience here. I listen to my crew, but I'm going to listen when you say weird stuff like that. But
I mean, how weird is let's eat the chicken? Is that really a...
No, he said let's eat the fox.
Fox. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. That is okay. That's a bit odd.
Yeah. Although it's weird how I would be much more okay if someone said let's eat the chicken, but
chickens are, at least the chicken we seem to see looks like it's the one that we've bioengineered to be tasty. So
yeah, I guess the point here was to do like a team building exercise. I liked the idea behind it though, and We speaking of juxtaposition with Rock Talk, like you mentioned a moment ago, we have here. She says that I don't want to be security officer. Stop calling me security officer. So setting that up, but of course that it doesn't go well. And Dow, what did you think when Dow confesses that they're not cadets and that they stole the ship? Because I think Janeway's reaction was a little. The first time I watched it, I was a little surprised, but I kind of made sense of it the second time I watched it. But what did you think?
I guess overall, at the end of the episode, I thought I was a little underwhelmed at how little of an impact it actually had. Like Janeway, what is it? Like the next scene that we see Janeway, she seems pretty much over it. I would have thought that this would be a bigger deal, and maybe it will be in subsequent episodes, but she's just, oh well, I'm just programmed to help whatever people are crewing the ship, even if they're pirates. It's
Could you imagine if the Andy Dick hologram in Message in a Bottle, the Voyager episode on the U.S.S. Prometheus, when those Romulans capture that ship, if he had just been like, I guess you're my crew now, I'll help you.
Yeah, that's basically what she does. I mean, there might be some special programming for cultures that are known to be hostile to the Federation, like the Romulans at that particular point in history. So I guess the biggest surprise to me was it is clearly played that Janeway had no idea she was being fooled, which I'd kind of been leaning on the idea that we were, when this moment came, she was going to say, yeah, I knew that. I've been known that all the while. But...
Well, I think she knew half of it, because the first thing he tells her is like, we're not really cadets. And she doesn't say anything. She's just stone-faced. And then he says, we stole the ship. And it's only then that she reacts. So I think she knew all along they weren't cadets. But I think she wasn't sure how they got on the ship.
I mean, why would there be a bunch of non-Starfleet people on a Starfleet starship if it wasn't some sort of we found it and took it kind of situation?
I don't know, but I think she was waiting.
What other story had she created in her head to justify these situations?
I think she was waiting for them to let her know.
So, I did feel like some of the stuff she does earlier in earlier episodes seemed to hint that she did know what was going on, but in hindsight, we see that her brain, her computer algorithm has been, damaged and Swiss cheesed a la Sam Beckett.
That's a good point. This is a little scrambled in there.
Yeah, so almost any weird thing she does at this point, you can just chalk up to whatever the heck screwed up her programming in the first place. Like for example, we've got there's probably time travel involved, but Janeway doesn't say, the star dates that I have in my records and the star dates I'm getting, that the computer says today don't make any sense whatsoever. She doesn't bring that up.
Brian,
in fact, her she seems to have a real hard time wrapping her head around concepts of time in this episode.
The writer, not the writer of this episode, but the writer / producer, Aaron Watkins, I think I'm getting his last name wrong. Someone correct me. It's been a long day. Sorry. But good Aaron on Twitter. He said that the star date at the beginning of this episode is wrong on purpose to show that there's already. Yeah, sure. There's already timey-wimey effects going on.
Okay, I didn't bother to. So when did you check what year that start date would be, or?
I don't think the year part, but I think maybe like the month part might be off. I don't know.
Okay, how you would ever know that it's off? I think that's the first present day start date they've really given us, but.
No, because we know 17 years after the last thing.
but those are usually rounded. It's usually not exactly 17 years. So
you're the one who's supposed to be on top of star dates. I don't.
I just
care. I don't care about star dates. So I don't really keep up with them.
Now I want to run it into my calculator and see what time that is. I just assumed it was 2383 that star date would punch out to be. But maybe I'll. Open up the spreadsheet while I got a chance. One other, I liked the idea of using the holodeck to visualize what is normally a thought experiment that exists in the head. So I mean, Roddenberry wanted the holodeck to show to be a way to visualize the emotional struggles a character was suffering, and here they use it to visualize the logic structure struggles that a character is having, which is interesting and different, but yet still very much in keeping with where Roddenberry wanted things to be with the holodeck. So the downside of that is, having run role-playing games, if you take a thought experiment and put it into an actual simulation environment, they'll come up with all sorts of things like, okay, you just hold on to the fox and stay here, and I'll go over and we'll just drop Jacob over there. Jacob could keep an eye on the chicken and the grain, and then we'll come back and get the fox, and it's easy.
Well, I think we can assume they had the same rules applied. Like,
Yeah.
they couldn't do
Yes.
that.
But
I mean, you could easily fit all three of those items into that boat, but like, the rules were probably just established before the scene that was not allowed.
Yeah, one has to assume that. But yeah, when you take and make physical these riddles, there's often a more nuts and bolty type approach that you can solve them with using the tools around you, which it often happens in role-playing games. They'll just say, well, screw it, we won't figure out the puzzle, we'll just use our phasers to cut through the wall and get into the tomb. Oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing then.
Well, in our live audience, Blue Sparrow is saying the Roddenberry vision is so wild. Some of his stuff is way ahead of its time still today. Oh, look! Oh my goodness! One of the producers of Star Trek Prodigy is in our live audience. Aaron Walke.
Okay.
Sorry, I butchered your last name. So sorry about that. But honored to have you here. The strange stardate was the first hint that Holo Janeway's temporal settings were being affected by the approaching Tachyon storm. So yeah, Aaron, we're curious now what the correct stardate for the episode is. He's telling us that we'll see the real stardate in the next episode. So there we go.
3. Okay, yeah, it does look like it's a 2383 star date. It just quickly glancing at my cheat sheet here.
Well, we'll have to go back and compare when we get the correct one next week.
Yeah. As a minor note, and maybe this should be in the Gorn eggs, they say that Rock Talk should be they're just assume Rock Talk should be this chief of security. That is the role that the Brakar had in
the Peter David books.
The Peter David books. That was what that species was doing. So I guess it's like assuming that the Vulcan must be the science officer.
Which Star Trek kind of has the tradition of that subversion. The ugly Gorn is actually an intelligent being that we shouldn't just kill on sight. It's kind of baked into the core of Star Trek. So.
Yeah, not every Tellarite is an engineer. Oh, wait.
Well, sometimes stereotypes are true, I guess. We only briefly glimpsed the Diviner in this episode, but we follow up on what happened last week with Nandi ratting out the kids, ratting out the Protostar, and we learned that they are months away. It would take months to catch them. So, 4,000 light years, that's still a pretty good time if you can do that in a matter of months. You still have a fast-ass ship, but...
Yeah, that is both nicely slow that they're acknowledging space is big and there's something special about the Protostar drive. They don't just forget that. But also, that's way faster than Voyager could cross that distance. And Voyager was a pretty state-of-the-art ship. That would have been 12 years ago. So, of course, the ship seems like maybe it's from the future or something. But I like that they acknowledge that distance matters. It's not like J.J. Abrams where, no, you just push the button and you're there.
Yeah, Kronos to the moon, baby.
Yeah. I really got sick of in some ways, that is the most annoying thing about the Kelvin Universe films, is trying to wrap my head around those insanely short ETAs. The other thing we discovered is apparently trans-quadrant communications is now common, even a Ferengi can do it. So so there is somebody set up like the Hirogen Communications Network. Maybe something like that now exists, or there's some new way, hyper subspace ultra warp transmissions or something that everybody, or at least lots of people, have on their ships. Because it wasn't even it wasn't even a message, it was a real-time convo. So yeah, we've definitely had some breakthrough in communications. At minimum, something like the Hirogen network from Voyager.
Yeah, and the diviner seems to be pretty high tech, even though he doesn't really doesn't really share it with his underlings, with his slave miners, because they weren't even used to transporters. But I guess the diviner is hoarding all the advanced technology for himself, and including apparently the ability to, if he knows the general location of the protostar, he can send his whatever data package over there to print off a dreadnought to go wreak havoc. I liked that though, because you could have done this entire episode without a big robot, a big evil robot you have to fight. They could have done it without like those little action beats, but it did kind of add a sense of dread, wondering like, okay, we know from the very beginning that Dreadnought is gonna show up. When is he coming?
Yeah,
a little bit of suspense added.
It's also a good example of 21st century science fiction that they would probably have never, very unlikely to have done in 90s Trek. They literally stream the bad guy
Yeah,
to
he's
the ship.
streaming. Yeah, he's streaming on Paramount Plus.
Yes, they stream the bad Dreadnought to the ship. In a world where the current generation is everything's able to be downloaded and uploaded within seconds from anywhere in the world. The idea that, and we have 3D printers, the idea that you could just get onto the internet, pull down a 3D printer pattern and run it is not that inconceivable. Whereas it always bugged me in 90s Trek that you don't really see people apparently uploading and downloading replicator patterns from other places.
Yeah.
In fact, we get the idea that when Vic Fontaine shows up on DS9, that they might have delivered an isolinear rod. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it was, we don't see the delivery, but we get that impression almost.
Yeah, the cloud isn't as ever present in Star Trek as it has become in real life. I assume there is an internet where things are constantly being transmitted like that, but they clearly weren't thinking that would be as big of it. And I think I've even heard Mike Okuda admit to this, like, oh yeah, that's the one thing we probably got wrong, is we always kind of relied on presenting things to be internal storage. Everything is like, you pull up, you don't go and Google something on the internet, you look it up on like the ship's computer archive. And I think he even said, they called that one wrong. They didn't realize how big of a thing the cloud would be when it
I will say, I don't think they actually have a contradiction, because they never explicitly say you can't do that stuff on Star Trek, and they never really have it's very rare that they have a place where the plot grinds to the halt because the heroes can't do something that they clearly should be able to, by given our knowledge of how technology is advancing. So you can imagine it was all there, like the toilets. We just imagined they had toilets on the ships, even though they were never referenced for the longest time. So we can imagine that there's cloud storage and internet, and people are downloading files and looking at blog posts from people on the other side of the quadrant. So it all still works surprisingly well. Actually, it's kind of embarrassing how well it does work. But yeah, they certainly would have emphasized it more. And I love that. Yeah, we just we just send them a file, and with the right protocols, it's basically like one of those little executable files that show up in dodgy emails usually.
Malware. They get hit with malware. And I think that it might have been like a Trojan horse type thing, because we know that there is something on the computer that's within with the diviner's language, coded in the diviner's language. So either at some point in the future or some point in the past, he put this on the ship. We're
Yeah.
still not sure how that whole timeline is going to play out, but
I mean, we see that here and later in this same episode that Dreadnought and the Diviner know a whole lot about the nuts and bolts and intricacies and details of the Protostar. They are not just casually familiar with this ship; they are intimately familiar.
I mean that's a big plot point later that Dreadnought seems to know the ship better than Gwen. So
yes. So I'm looking forward to finding the answer to why that is, because it seems to be a very deliberate thing.
Yeah, I think we might get something big within the next 2 weeks before Prodigy goes back on hiatus. But for now, let's talk about the Tachyon storm and the temporal anomaly it brings on, and the first of the different timelines we see with Jankom's sped up timeline. But there's the line of dialogue from him I kind of liked when they're approaching I don't know if they were going towards the storm or if the storm was coming towards them, maybe a combination of both. But when he says Jankom was afraid it was a physical manifestation of how he feels. Tachyon storms being a new thing. I don't think there's ever, we've had ion storms, but we've never had a Tachyon storm before.
Yeah, the Tachyon has very explicitly now become the go-to for time travel in Star Trek, as far as whenever you need some techno babble. It was kind of like that in the 90s, but I think didn't they make a big deal about that in season 2 of Discovery, that if you had tachyons you must then time travel is almost
or cloaking devices apparently. But I mean, to me, like I don't even care about tachyons and theoretical physics anymore. It's a Star Trek plot device to me. That may or may not exist in the real world. But
well, I mean, a tachyon is just anything that travels faster than light,
right?
So,
that's all theoretical.
Yeah, there's no solid evidence that anything like anything tachyonic exists. But I did look like they were flying into the storm, and I was kind of like, you could turn, you could stop. You have this super fast drive. There's no way the storm can catch up with you. They haven't said something like, oh no, if we fire up the super drive while we're near the storm, it'll damage the space whales or something like that. They just kind of, no one's even on the bridge. It just kind of drifts into it.
It feels like it's a lot of like the left hand not talking to the right hand. Because like Jankom had no idea that there was this nearby tachyon storm. Gwen had no idea that, if a gravitational fluctuation might mess up their proto drive. So I think it's all pretty much evidence of like they're still gelling as a crew.
Those meetings in the magic meeting room, they're important. You have to have those in the morning so everyone's on the same page.
Those boring next generation conference room scenes. They actually need some of those. This is the validation of those right here. But I like that Jankom Pog is, as much of a big goofball as he is, this kind of reminded us like, oh yeah, this guy is actually good at what he does. He does like spring into action pretty quickly. And we get the impression he would have been able to fix this if he had more time, but he had the sped up timeline.
I did want to say I also really liked Jacob's little meta line about projecting his own internal doubts onto the out into space. It's not quite Deadpool-esque, but it is nicely meta that he just for a moment is just on the verge of realizing he's a character in a TV show. He's right there, and then of course he ignores that's silly and moves on. But but literally, the storm is meant to represent the chaos that the crew currently is in, and how they need to pull together and work together if they are going to not be a storm. So
stormy weather. It was another Star Trek show would recently remind us, but. We get that time wave that breaks everyone off into their own time phase or timeline. They use these terms interchangeably. So I think one way we might be able to explain this, Brian, if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of how the anomaly works, is that it might have created the same ship, but it's in like 6 different alternate timelines, but they're all moving at different speeds, and that's why they can't see each other. Because, like here, Jankom Pog, where he's sped up super fast. So you would think when the other people come into engineering, you would see like this really fast moving Tellarite, but
Yeah.
they never see that. So it's like the same ship, but like different timelines. We have that effect on Janeway where she's split into multiple images. So, but she's also part of the ship, so it's like the ship is split, maybe, and because she's part of the ship, she can move back and forth between them. That's the best I can think of. But
There's that Voyager episode where there's two versions of Voyager overlapping each other that is
Yeah.
somehow both using the same antimatter tank, and there's all sorts of stupid attached to that. But the essence of two different versions of the ship overlapping the same space kind of somewhat reminded me of this, where there's different ships moving at different speeds. But yeah, I don't quite understand why the people are separated out. Why aren't there alternate versions of Gwen on every ship? And there's a line, Rock Talk, when she first shows up after the timey-wimey explosion, she says that the other people were moving funny. And at first I thought that meant she had encountered the other people, but she's slowed down and they're sped up so that they were zipping around her and she was confused by that. But then we never see anybody else on the ship. So I was like, who is it she saw that was moving funny?
I didn't hear her say that. Are you sure she wasn't talking about just like the stuff in the ship was moving?
I'm pretty sure it was the people, because I thought she said it, but then it didn't make sense with the rest of the episode, so I figured I misheard it. And then when I rewatched it, I listened carefully because I was like, what did she say? No, she said she saw and everybody was moving strangely or funnily or something like that. And I was like, okay, was that line left over from some earlier version of this where they were going to be kind of visually interacting, but at so speeds that were so much different they couldn't easily interact? But I'll have to go back and
check that, because I always watch everything with the captions and I pay a lot of attention to the dialogue, but I don't remember that being in there, but it might have got past me.
Yeah, well, it's only a quick thing, one quick little comment in the middle of a longer sentence, and then it never seems to come up again.
Aaron might have some insight on this episode, though. Right here, he says, when we were breaking the episode, we decided each crewmate might actually repeat steps of the previous crewmates. We just didn't want to show them rebuilding the warp matrix 6 times.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good move. You need to have everybody doing it, not dwell on repeating things, especially when you only got 20-something minutes to play with. So I did like how things take forever to fall down in her world.
Yeah, we can possibly like use that to kind of figure out how long she's actually stuck in here. If you time out how long it would take that stuff to actually fall those distances, but I have my own opinion on that, but I'll save that till later. But yeah, but Janeway goes from the sped up Jankum-Pog timeline, which kind of sucked because, the engineer, he might have been able to fix things pretty quickly, but he had the smallest amount of time. So then we go to the little kid, the little 8-year-old has the most amount of time, but she doesn't seem to be much help. She, when Janeway's trying to explain what's going on to her, and I guess to the audience, that's when she gets like overwhelmed. She's like, no, I don't want to do this. Computer, make Janeway go away. So that's when she's... Like we were saying, yeah, they make her kind of like annoying little kid behavior here, but then later we see her more mature at the end. So it kind of shows her arc within the episode.
It's like those people who try to watch Moffat era Doctor Who and are like, no, this is stupid. I don't, it makes my head hurt. I'm not watching this.
Yeah, she couldn't handle it. She's like, no, it's too much timey-wimey. I can't handle it.
Yeah. I should have started her out small. Here's Back to the Future 1 and 2. Watch those, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, baby steps. Baby's first time travel. Prodigy didn't do that. Prodigy didn't spoon feed it to the all ages audience. They're like, no, you gotta pay attention. We expect you to keep up. Let's go.
I literally said this was the baby's first time travel story when it started, and then at the end, in reference to Rock Talk, I was like, "Oh, and it's baby's first techno babble."
Yeah, she's getting all the Star Trek tropes.
Yeah.
Dave, let's talk about the Zero timeline. When we get some more exposition for the audience there, that's when we get the visual explanation of the wavy line and how the proximity to the proto-core affected how drastic your time shift is. I kind of like that little visualization of it. It reminded me of a modern comic book writer, Jonathan Hickman. He's always coming up with like weird graphics to explain his science fiction concepts in his comic books. So I'm like, oh yeah, Jonathan Hickman. He would have loved this. He would have loved to have like opened an issue of a comic book with this little infographic of a wavy line and these different points, different points on the wave. But
yeah, I did want to say, unlike Voyager, this show actually puts out a graphic and sticks to it and uses it to actually explain something. And I really appreciated that extra effort on this. I was like, dang, okay, they actually, this show, despite the fact that I feel like this one's a bit shaky on what the hell's going on issues, I think that Prodigy plays more attention to the rules, trying to have consistent rules for stuff than a lot of the other Star Trek shows do, like a lot of them. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can definitely get the impression there's an attention to those details more often than not when we're watching Prodigy. But you know what we were talking about with each crew member kind of plays a different role into eventually getting to the solution. I guess Jankum Pog, he's the first one to kind of identify the problem, bring it to Janeway's attention. Rock Talk's not much help at first, but then we get to Zero. Zero's the one who figures out the solution with the warp matrix.
Zero was working just fine, it didn't even need Janeway to show up.
Again, if Zero had more time, they really got unlucky. Well, I mean, I guess it all worked out in the end, but initially, it seems like they got pretty unlucky with Zero and Jankum Pog probably being the top two at being able to resolve this, and they were the ones given the least amount of time.
Oh, nice.
Aaron is also telling us in our live audience that we drew this graphic into the script itself. The Nick team said it was the first time they had math dropped into the screenplay. So, yeah, I guess Nickelodeon does not have a history of a lot of math in their stories. The Ren and Stimpy people never did that, or SpongeBob.
No collapsing sine waves for Ren and Stimpy's.
Yeah.
Damped sine wave. Apologies.
Brian, when we see the transition visuals when Janeway is I guess moving from the Zero timeline to the Murph timeline, when you see all these CGI faces of the different crew members and kind of passing past them one after another, what did you think of? Because I think you probably thought the same thing as me.
Star Trek 4.
Yeah, straight up Star Trek 4.
Yes. I kind of wanted them all to be all whited out. But
yeah, that would have been interesting.
Some really low-grade, old 1980s CGI images of them popping up out of water.
No, the show looks so beautiful. They want to show off the modern CGI. That would have been funny if they made it look like the 1986 CGI. That would the Lower Decks would have done it that way.
Yeah, I think. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yes.
Yeah, Aaron confirms. He says, "My favorite homage to the most surreal time travel sequence in all of science fiction."
It's definitely an odd one. I have to admit, I'm having trouble thinking of one that was. I've seen weirder trip type things like the Stargate in 2001: A Space Odyssey, or falling into the black hole, or into the grid on Tron, but none of those were time travel. So yeah, this might be the weirdest time travel-y kind of voyage like that.
And I guess we do see like the purple line moving between the different characters. So I guess that's supposed to represent the oscillating line. So again, it ties in that visual aspect of it.
Well, I think they're literally going up and down the sine wave. I think
Yeah, that's what I mean. But Janeway comes across Murph, who is no help. Who, after Rock Talk, based on the wave, Murph would have had the second largest amount of time. So again, and I love this, Brian. I love when writers make their characters have bad luck instead of good luck. It's something
Yeah.
that our friend Dave, who couldn't join us tonight, but something that Dave has pointed out to me is that, if you look at like the action sequence at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where just everything is like going terrible for Indiana Jones when he's, or not at the end, but when he's during like the car chase or the tank chase or whatever, like he just has like the worst luck. Like nothing works out well for him. The dangers keep multiplying as things go on, and you compare that to something like the hobbits or the dwarves or whatever in the Hobbit trying to escape Goblin Town in the Peter Jackson Hobbit movie, and it's like they'll like flip off of a ladder, and it's like just the right amount of length to like get them across a chasm or something. They just like luck out like nonstop for all like these cute little visuals, and that's a lot less interesting than when your characters just have the most terrible luck. I know you're a big fan of that modern Lost in Space show on Netflix that people should check out. But yeah, those characters, I almost feel like it breaks the believability that they're like, really, you're gonna have that problem, and then oh my goodness, and then this is gonna go wrong. Like, wow.
I mean, there's a lot of Lost in Space, like, wow, you probably should have died, but you got really lucky there. I think everything's all rolling ones or 20s in Lost in Space. But there are a lot of ones rolled in Lost in Space. That's absolutely true.
Oh, and this is not something I put in my Gorn eggs. That's the section of the show where we look at all the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections. But Prodigy producer Aaron Welke is telling me in the live audience that the boot that Murph is eating is actually one of Spock's hover boots from Star Trek V. So didn't catch that one. That's cool to know that they have those on the Protostar, though. I'd like to see them in action.
I guess, yeah, we really should be paying more attention to what Murph is eating. I guess it sounds like that he loves Easter eggs. They're tasty.
And he apparently Murph would have got that from Nandi's ship last week, but it might be the gravity boot from Star Trek 6. So one or the other. So yeah, that's cool. You heard it here first, people.
Yes, that is amazing. I just like that they should just have Murph eating an Easter egg every single episode.
Yeah, what will Murph eat this week?
Yeah. They'll have the Tox Utah at some point.
Well, I guess let's talk about Dal and how he wouldn't put down his Game Boy, which I think a lot of parents probably feel this way with, their kids when they're trying to tell them something, but their kids are just like playing a game on their phone or their iPad or something.
Yeah. I mean, from a point of view of, this is a Star Trek episode and dangerous stuff happens, it seems wildly irresponsible for Dahl not to pay attention, but it is also the most teenage thing that you can just about do on television these days, is to have them obsessed with playing with their phone and not paying attention to some sort of adult figure.
I mean, he was having a bad day. Things didn't go well in the holodeck. He had like that emotional moment where he confessed everything to Janeway. He just wanted to go like relax and decompress and didn't want to be bothered. He does eventually like paid attention. We get the passing of the baton. Jankum found the problem. Zero found the solution. Now, Dal, you must execute the solution and build this warp matrix. Without the replicator, without the vehicle replicator, you're going to have to assemble it yourself.
I think now that I think about it, Dal is probably like, oh, I disappointed Janeway. Well, Janeway's not a real person. I don't need to feel bad that I disappointed her. And I think he is sitting there in that bed telling himself he doesn't care if she knows that he lied to her and that it doesn't bother him, which is, of course, a lie, but he won't admit it to himself. So when she shows up to presumably chew him out and lecture him for lying, he is like absolutely adamant that he is not going to, that he doesn't care about anything.
Doesn't want to hear it. Yeah.
Hear it because he in order to feel good, to tell himself that he doesn't care, he has to walk the walk that he's talking in his head.
Yeah.
Which is that I don't care about anything Janeway cares about. So in the context of what had happened, now that I think about it, that would be the one time where you could really see him leaning into, no, I just don't care about Janeway. I don't care about her opinion. I don't care if she's disappointed. She's just a hologram. She just doesn't get mad, doesn't get sad, doesn't get happy, doesn't laugh at your jokes, just runs programs.
But then he comes through.
Yeah, it's just a mood once he gets his head in the game. Once he realizes, oh, there's a actual problem here, he gets off his butt and does stuff, especially with Janeway nagging him to take out the trash. All right. If we're all gonna die if I don't take out the trash, I'll take out the trash.
Two things here, Brian, that I want to touch on is one. The Apollo 13 pep talk, I'm sure you liked that because I know you're a big real-life space travel enthusiast and NASA enthusiast, right?
Oh, yeah, I know that. I'm maybe not the hugest, but yes, I enjoy NASA. I loved Apollo 13. I've seen it many times. I love that they took that one scene from Apollo 13 and made The Martian out of it.
Yeah.
And then somebody looked at The Martian and made Lost in Space, the new Lost in Space out of it. So, yeah, I love this stuff.
The successful failure, I believe. But this also brought to my attention, why doesn't Janeway build this herself? And then later in the episode, Rock Talk says, I wish I could hug you. And then I remember, when they first met the Janeway hologram and Dal passed his hand through her. I think she's not a physical hologram outside of the holodeck. I don't think the holo projectors on the ship are making like a hard hologram that can pick up things. When she said, I only can affect the low-level systems on the ship, I think, that's really all you can do. And I love that idea, if I'm reading that correctly, because that means the kids have to do everything. She can't do anything for them other than guide them.
She literally picks up a tool when she goes to engineering with Rock Talk. First time.
Never mind then.
She picks up a tool and says, we've got to find a solution to this problem. And she picks up some tool off the floor and waves it in the air to gesture, and maybe she didn't, maybe the tool's still there and she just conjured a tool in her hand to wave around, but it all starts feeling like, so then when she said later on, there was this you can't hug me thing, I was like, you were picking up tools easy earlier. That's way harder than just making a torso that Rock Talk can give a squeeze to. So I'm confused. I like the holodeck in the Next Generation, I need some clear explanations of the parameters of what she can. Maybe only her hands are real. Maybe they figured there's no real need for her body to be hard light. Maybe only her hands need to be hard light because that's the only thing that's going to push a button or open a door or pick up something. So, maybe the system isn't set up to give her a physical body. So,
did you notice the Starfleet Delta screw?
I saw that. I have no idea if that's a good idea from an engineering standpoint, but it is cute as hell.
I mean, it's on brand. They really like their deltas.
Yes.
But
I want to see an episode of Short Treks where they're like, you need to come up with the emblem for Starfleet now that we've got this United Federation of Planets. And he just scribbles some stuff on a paper without looking at it and says, that's it, do that. It's no effort at all.
Just run with that.
Yeah, that would be, they'd never do that, but it would be hilarious.
But I like the moment when Dal, he's completed the warp matrix and then he doesn't have the correct coupler, basically dilithium coupler they call it, but the connector, they need an adapter or something to connect it. So kind of a simple visual thing, anyone watching the show can understand. Yeah. But I like that moment, that heartfelt moment.
And very 21st century, where we're all looking for the right dongly bits to recharge our cell phones. And it's not the right type. And
I need USB-C.
Yeah.
I have a USB micro, or is it USB mini? I don't know. I need the adapter.
Yeah.
But just the moment though, where Janeway is telling them, you didn't fail, you didn't let us down, you came through, because then they pass the baton again. We go from Jankum found the problem, Zero developed the solution, Dal tries to execute the solution, he finds another problem, and so then they pass the baton again to Gwen. Aaron in our live audience is saying she has we're getting some explanation on the Janeway stuff. this is really cool. She has restrictions of what she can and can't do as a training hologram and what she can interact with in certain ways. She can't do things for them, only advise. Okay. So she can wave a tool around, she just can't use it to build something.
Yeah, I know. Okay. And,
Okay. So that makes sense for, because they established at the very beginning she is a training hologram.
Yeah.
She's just an instructor. It's like the
maybe they can't hug because there's some protocol about teacher student, boundaries.
That's a very different hologram. If you want to, you can go to Quark's Holo Suite and
hug those holograms.
Yeah, you can hug those all day long, baby.
But I have certain inhibitor programs that prevent me from getting too close to my students.
Okay. Well, cool.
Honestly, that's actually vaguely plausible as most things.
Yeah, you don't want your educational software for your online class. It can't like give you the answers of the test. And basically, she's like educational software.
Yeah, that would be really irritating if she ended up with a situation where she couldn't tell them the answer because it was a test, but it was also required to save their lives. I'm sorry, I can't tell you. You have to figure it out and be like 3PO in Rise of Skywalker or something. I'm forbidden to actually translate this for you. I don't know if I actually want to see her that handicapped,
but I just love the idea of they have to do it all themselves, and they can ignore her. They cannot listen to her. We saw the repercussions of that last week, or here where she can guide them but not actually do it. It's definitely the best way to go about this premise, I think, of her as the training hologram and them as the not true cadets, but people who I think are learning what it is to be Starfleet. And I love that premise. I'm still digging it.
I love that we had to go through Janeway convincing and explaining to each of the characters. And even Zero, we get the scene where, there's this problem. Yeah, I already know. With Gwen, we know Gwen is eminently practical. She is, she's the Ellen Ripley of the ship, the one who's got her head screwed on straight. We don't even need to show the scene where Janeway says this is problem. We just cut straight to them working together because, of course, Gwen's going to take this seriously and drop everything and immediately focus on doing whatever she can.
Yeah. She's already built the warp matrix, and she's opening cabinets looking for that missing dilithium coupler that she needs, and is trying to.
Yeah, we open with that. We could skip all that because it's Gwen, and we know we don't need to see that. It would have been boring. We've got a problem. Okay, what do we do to fix it?
She might have been able to pull it off if it wasn't for Dreadnought coming, or I think Dread 2 is what he's called on the captions. But I liked the way that he looked, by the way, and that like he didn't quite have all of the General Grievous-y abilities that the normal Dreadnought has. He's a more simpler. He's like the version that you would send in an email to 3D print somewhere, and he kind of looks like he's made out of their shuttlecraft parts, because that's what the 3D printer, that's what their vehicle replicator would use. But yeah, it added a little bit of action, and of course, like the tension of like, when is he going to show up? What is he going to do?
Yeah.
And the thing that he does to Janeway, where he disables her using Chakotay's voice, old data trick impersonating someone's voice.
Yeah, I was kind of like, at first I was like, did they just delete Janeway? I was like, this is a timey-wimey episode. They'll find a way to undo
yeah,
it.
she'll be fine in the end.
Yeah, there'll be a reset button somewhere.
But when they have that encounter between Janeway and Dreadnought, those of us who are long-term Star Trek fans watching this, we're really curious, what happened to Chakotay? # where's Chakotay? How have they been looking for the ship for so long? What's going on with all this stuff? When Janeway says, I recognize you. You were in that security camera footage I've been watching. You are the one who corrupted my memory, deleted those files, whatever. And the words he says to her are close, but not quite. Yeah. So it makes me wonder what exactly did happen.
My hunch is that there was something like Chakotay just gave the computer some really rapid, quick, not completely thought out instructions to delete and lock down and disable certain systems to stop the bad guys from getting them somehow, and that's what we're seeing the fallout from that. Is that was a an improvised emergency quick fix, that because they didn't have time to come up with a proper protocol for what they wanted to do. And I don't know, that's still what I'm betting on, is that we're going to find out that it was like Chakotay had 5 seconds to get to stop the bad guys, and so he had to come up with an order that would disable things and stop things for the bad guys, and that was he didn't have time to
that matches with what we saw. I mean, it looked like it looked like he was in a pretty urgent situation with the evil robot literally like coming through the door. I think we'll get some answers very soon. I think the next 2 episodes are going to be something big. So I would not be surprised if we get some of that stuff cleared up very soon. And I do like that Dreadnought. It kind of adds to his competence, and he's such a competent villain, and that makes him scarier. But he's able to like quickly figure out what part he can use, and just pulls it out of the closet, and basically tells Gwen like, "Yeah, you suck. You're your dad's worst mistake ever. I just did your job in like 5 seconds, and the ship is mine."
He also inadvertently says, "Dad cares about you." That's not what he's trying to say, but he says, "Yeah, Dad wants you alive."
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's a mistake, but Dad wants you alive. And there is that that's an interesting little bit of information that I'm sure she, once she's calmed down and had a chance to think about things, probably thought about a bit.
We're getting into that, like that Darth Vader and Luke, like there's still good in you. Like he's gonna have that redemption, I think.
I said last week that this is all going to end with the Diviner teaming up with the kids to fight
Dreadnought.
I think that's where we're headed. I have no particular evidence for that, other than that would be an interesting place to end up. But and yes, we see that Gwen is not just paying lip service to her role as Ellen Ripley on the ship. She knows how to pull a Ripley.
And she will blow you into space like you are a xenomorph, and also blow out the warp matrix, which I guess last week when they were figuring out the transporter, Gwen didn't figure it out because she doesn't beam it back. Although I suppose it might have, they kind of like throw this thing together kind of haphazardly, so it might not actually stay intact after it gets blown out into the vacuum of space. It's probably binged up.
There's that. There's also the possibility that they're in a tachyon storm that will interfere with transporters. And even if it just interferes with the sensors, so she can't get a lock on the thing, she's kind of in a bad way there. But yes, I was like, she blows it out the air like that. That was nice. I like how she just hardcore, when she just basically extends out the nacelle and switches off the force fields, and out he goes.
Yeah.
That was nicely done.
But then we go back to Rock Talk, who is in isolation for we don't know how long. I think we get a Walton's reference with like the good night John Boy moment in the bunks, and I guess the Janeway says she can alter her programming to match whatever time phase that she's in, but I guess like all the software can do that, because Rock Talk can still go to the holodeck and like watch a recording of them, but it must be like super slowed down for her to be able to perceive it like this. But that's okay. That makes sense. Same thing, when she gets the message from Gwen, the computer just knows like slow it down. Or the replicators, you can still use the replicators. The saddest thing to me, Brian, though, is like she keeps eating that same Nutrigoop from the mines. Like she has never had any other food, and she still doesn't try anything all these years later.
I hadn't caught that, but yeah, I guess that is a little worrying there.
Yeah, it's sad. It's depressing, and I don't know. They've been keeping it secret. Aaron, maybe now you'll finally tell us how long. How long was too long? How long was Rock Talk stuck alone, isolated on the show? But 276 attempts to bring Janeway back. I think it might be safe to say each one of those was like a different day. So that's the better part of a year. And it might have taken her like a couple of months before she even tried. So I think she was stuck like this for over a year. Yeah, Aaron just keeps saying too long.
Too long. Can Aaron tell us if we're going to get an answer to this question in a future episode?
Yeah, Aaron, let us know if we can expect to find out someday.
Yes.
Jill 47 in our live audience thinks that it was years and years, so perhaps longer.
It's not impossible to argue that, especially within alien psychology and physiology.
We don't know how they age.
Yeah. I found it interesting that they don't tell us. They could have, it's clearly a choice on the writer's part here that that we don't get to know. And maybe that's going to be explored in future episodes.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's the only thing that makes sense to me, is that this must be a plot point for a future episode, is that the revelation. Maybe we'll get a whole episode that flashes back to adventures she went on while she was that we never got to see. There'll be a novel series someday of just her having adventures in that gap. Okay, all right. So we have to invite you to a convention to find out. Fair enough. Fair enough. Right.
Aaron is telling us we definitely had a number in the room. I don't know if I'll reveal it unless I'm invited to speak at a Star Trek panel. Haha.
Okay.
Well, if I ever have that power, I know who I will invite. I like the idea of why she needed Janeway back, though. Is like she had the video call from Gwen, had like the email. Here's I attached the instructions for the warp matrix from Zero. Here is Dreadnought figured out how to get a dilithium coupler, so that's everything you need. Go build this. Rock Talk builds it, and then she's like, such like a little kid thing. Like, well, I don't know what to hook this up to. I don't know. I guess I gotta instead of thinking like, okay, I better go like study the the engineering, the warp system, figure that out. It's like, no, I'm gonna go like learn computer science, fix this hologram program of Janeway, and then ask her. I mean, it worked.
If you fix Janeway, she can answer all the other questions that you'd spend who knows how long trying to learn. Apparently, we don't just have these sort of computer systems that she's not terribly good at just interfacing with the general computer, the dumb computer that runs the ship. I did think that she did a much better job than the last child who was abandoned in a spaceship for years and years, who had minerals inside her body and had to deal with dilithium issues.
Oh. Well, and also
because think about it, that kid just kind of went to pieces.
Brian and our audience, Blue and Jill are telling us that we need to invite Aaron on to Tex-Trek.
Oh well, that'd be awesome.
So Aaron, anytime that we cover every episode of Prodigy, and then we can do some additional streams also if you want to talk about the show. So we'd be more than happy to have you on board. I can send you a message on Twitter if you want to talk about that, but it would certainly be an honor. But Brian, what was your reaction when we finally get the timeline fixed? Everyone is on the bridge and they have like that big hug. Did you think that was like an earned emotional moment? Because it really worked for me, but.
I thought it was fine, especially for like, I guess the kids, Rock Talk who spent years apart. And do we know like who were the other slow kids? Was
Murph would have been the second slowest, and
then,
he didn't seem to mind. He was just going to eat gravity boots or whatever. So
we're going to find out that Murph can talk now and has a family. And Gonna be
he
like
actually he left the ship and like went on like all these different adventures. He like brokered peace between like two warring civilizations. Went like somewhere else and like cured a plague that was like wiping out their population. Yeah, like did all this stuff, and then like he comes back to the ship and just is acting like a dumb blob again.
I don't want to confuse them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the cat on Red Dwarf. So yeah, yeah, no, I was fine with the hug. I especially felt that Rock Talk definitely deserved a hug after everything she went through.
Yeah, for sure.
And I like Rock Talk or Jacob actually remembering being blown up. That was a interesting little thing that he has to ponder. I guess they managed to rewind time a bit for people as well when they put the thing together. So yeah, I don't know. On one hand, I kind of want to see them explore the trauma of being alone on this ship for years and years. On the other hand, I feel like that's probably not appropriate to dive too deep in a kid's show like this. And that they already did that largely in Discovery Season 3. So it's kind of retreading ground. On the other hand, this show's kind of about doing a kid version of stuff we've seen in other Star Trek. So maybe retreading ground is okay. I don't know.
Well, in our live audience, Boat Wreck, aka PJ, our friend PJ, he is saying Rock Talk's isolation was relatable, and yeah, I sadly agree because part of the, I guess the pandemic age, but yeah, a lot of times life can feel pretty isolating, and you only talk to someone on a little view screen, like when Gwen is able to communicate with Rock Talk. I like that Gwen is kind of, she's like the older kid. She's like the big sister here when she's asking Janeway, well, how long was it? And Janeway just gives the cryptic answer that Aaron's given us now. It's just too long, but I like that, that concern that she shows there.
Janeway also would not give an answer earlier when someone asked, how much time do we have? Not, T minus, what was it?
T minus not very much or something like that.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, is that a plot point? Can she not do time properly? Is there something wrong with her?
Yeah, I mean, like if something, I mean, she's already a little scrambled anyway. So yeah, and then if there's other like weird temporal stuff messing with the computer.
And I guess apparently the star date she gives at the beginning is wrong. So, maybe there is something more to this. Janeway and time do not go together well.
Well, Thomas Hill in our live audience is asking us a question about the final shot of the episode where we get the reveal of Dreadnought. But he's asking, what does the crew do with Dreadnought? A, transport him into space. B, reprogram him to be a part of the crew as a security officer. I don't know if they're going to be able to reprogram him or beam him out. I think he's a pretty capable bad guy, so they might have bigger fish to fry next week. I think next week they're actually going to be setting up something big for maybe like a 2-part story for the not a season, maybe mid-season finale. We're getting like these 5-episode batches, so I don't know what to call it, but I think it'll probably be something kind of special to go out on before we have the long hiatus.
Yeah. This is a Dreadnought that was printed in a different phase of the ship, or is this Dreadnought that got blown into space who got on board? Do we know exactly what we're seeing here? Yeah,
it could be like a different attempt. Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't really think about it much though. I just saw this and was like, they'll explain this next week. That's probably where they're going to pick up next week.
I guess I assumed it was one that was printed on a different timeline of the ship, but and that perhaps didn't get finished because apparently the printers weren't working well, and when the time was sped up or slowed down, it was jamming them up. So, I see. Okay, we have an answer here. All right. So it is literally a reset button. Everyone keeps their mentality, but their memories, but physically they are back. So that's interesting. So they could have actually shown Rock Talk all grown up, and then when they pushed the button on the gadget, she would have turned back into a little kid, but with the memories of her grown-up self. That would have been potentially. I guess it could have added a bit too much to what was already a very busy episode. But
And then Aaron goes on to say this Dreadnought is a half printed. It's a timeline version of Dreadnought who was half printed in the vehicle replicator. So
okay.
So the more T-800 vibes. I kind of get, like at the end of the first Terminator when the T-800 is crushed and damaged, but it's still like coming towards Sarah Connor. That's kind of like when it's the scariest,
Yeah. Well, I thought Rock Talk, the one we see on the Diviner ship.
You mean Dreadnought, not Rock Talk.
Dreadnought. Yeah, sorry. Dreadnought reminds me, and I haven't dug up a picture to look at how accurate it is, but some of the killer robots in Terminator, what was it, Terminator 4, which had like a name. They didn't just
Salvation,
that's it. When they were running around in those burned out cities and stuff, they had these multi-legged robots who had faces and red eyes that kind of looked a little like Dreadnought.
Oh yeah, they had like a dumb name too. They're called like the T Turbos or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm blanking on it, which is odd.
I only saw that movie the one time in theaters, and
and I've actually seen it 4 times, and I don't really like it that much, but I watch it whenever I do the rest of the Terminator stuff. I always do, a complete all the Terminator. If I'm going to sit through the good stuff, I have to sit through the bad stuff. So,
all right. Well, Brian, do you have any final thoughts on this episode on Time Amok?
I guess I'm glad that my first thought when hearing the title was that we were going to have something to do with people going into heat and mating rages.
No Pon Far here.
And I was like, on a kids show, really? What the heck are they planning here? But no, it's just some wibbly wobbly stuff that's much more kid friendly.
Yeah. No, it was a fun one. Like I said at the top of the show, I love the temporal anomaly stuff. I think Star Trek does it better than anyone, and it's one of the my favorite tropes or staples or whatever you want to call it. I think this felt different enough. It felt just different enough, even though like it borrowed elements from Fractured or Shattered or whatever on Voyager, and borrowed what was it, phase, in phase, out of phase, but the Next Generation episode with the frozen phase. Romulans, the next phase. So it definitely like borrowed stuff from those, but it felt unique. And again, like I said at the top of the show, the heart is what really sold me on it. I loved the emotional beats and the teamwork of it, and seeing them work as a crew, and then they all get to hug at the end.
Yeah. Being able to think 4-dimensionally is something is something they've done at least one other time in Star Trek. Picard has to arrange for all the different ships in all the different timelines to do stuff in the final episode of TNG.
That's like a little bit like that All Good Things stuff. I mean, another timey-wimey one, but
yes.
At this point, I'm just going to move into the Gorn Eggs section of our show. That's where we talk about all the Easter eggs, in-jokes, and continuity connections that I found in the episode that I thought were worth bringing up. Just the title of the episode itself, Time Amok, is a bit of an Easter egg. I feel like most hardcore Trekkies would have caught this one, but Amok Time being one of the most iconic episodes of all Star Trek. Way back on the second season of the original series, was actually the season premiere, and was the famous episode where, Spock enters the Pon Far and has to go back to his home world to find a mate, and ends up having to have a gladiatorial battle with Captain Kirk, because the original series was terrifically melodramatic and had these wonderfully entertaining, contrived action sequences that just really hold up to the test of time, in my opinion. They're super iconic, especially this one with the famous music and just the visual aesthetics, referenced all the time, both in modern Star Trek and in the rest of pop culture. And then the other thing I picked up in this episode that I thought was worth bringing up is Dreadnought using the Chakotay voice like Data did in the episode Brothers. But the actual command code, and I think they came up with the command code here. I don't think this is from any particular Voyager episode, at least not that I found online when I was trying to look into it. But it's very much in like that style of Alpha Tango 454 or whatever they say. But we actually get the 47 here, the magical Star Trek number, which I'm always thrilled as a hardcore 47 enthusiast. But Chakotay's authorization code is Chakotay Zulu X-ray dash 475. So there you go. Got the 47. That was it on Gorn Eggs, but I do have some subspace transmissions because we love to hear what our audience is thinking. So, if you can't join us live, you can still let us know your thoughts. You can reply to my tweets and let me know on Twitter. You can tell us on the Tex-Trek Facebook page. You can send me an email, and we might share your response to this episode to Time Amok next week. But right now, we're going to talk about what people were saying about last week's episode, First Contact. And Starfleet Boy, who is helping us out as our chief engineer tonight, and thank you for helping us on the live show. But he told us on Twitter, superb episode. Dal's backstory and revelation about Nandi was heart-wrenching for me. I loved the new species and planet. I thought Janeway's dressing down at the end was great. Also, all the Chakotay stuff is super interesting. Definitely hooked on this show. So yeah, we're hoping to get more of that Chakotay stuff very soon. And Earl Grey Trekkie, a.k.a. Robbie, who's been helping us out on the Tex-Trek Facebook page, had this to say on Twitter. I loved Nandi. I must have just missed the Ferengi. As sad as her betraying Dal was, I liked that Janeway's saying it as it is. I was hoping for a little more revealed about Chakotay mystery. I wonder where we'll see Nandi from here. Well, we saw her in this episode very briefly, but she's definitely going to be a recurring villain. And then on YouTube, we got a comment from RBA1225, who I think is a new viewer. Haven't heard from them before, but they said, so there was a book that was copied word for word for the description of the Prime Directive that makes it canon when it didn't used to be. Could you talk more about that book? And Brian, I'm going to let you respond to that in just a second, but I want to read their other comment, which was, Janeway is wondering who the robot is, but the kids know. Hopefully she shows the video to the kids. So yeah, I think right now that they are kind of all going to be on the same page about who is Dreadnought. What do you know about them? What does Janeway know? What do the kids know? So that stuff's coming to a head, and I think that's also going to lead to reveals about Chakotay. But Brian, do you want to respond to what RBA1225 is saying about the book that was used for at least section 1 of the Prime Directive that was on screen last week?
The earliest, I'm trying to get it off the shelf here. Our shelves are very, very packed with lots and lots of, all this is Star Trek tech manuals back here. But this one here, which was a fan publication from 1980, I don't know if this is the first printing or not, the Enterprise, U.S.S. Enterprise Officer's Manual by Jeffrey Mandel, who would go on to do significantly more for Star Trek. Notably, he, let's see, there is Jeffrey Mandel's name on the Star Trek star charts, and he did the big boxed atlas thing later on. So he eventually got to do like real Star Trek reference books. And even if he actually started out doing fan stuff, his fan stuff is great, by the way, if you are into that kind of non-canonical tech manuals. If you're a fan of that stuff, he wrote some of the best stuff back there.
Yeah. Some of it's very hard to find these days.
So yeah, he wrote in the he wrote a general order list. I think he might have been one of the first fans to actually try to do this. And it had the first one is when contacting a planet making normal progress toward a technological civilization, an officer of Starfleet shall make no identification of self or mission, no interference with social development of said planet, no reference to space or other worlds or more advanced civilizations. Word for word. So I was pleased to see that bit of stuff making it in there. I think I'm trying to remember if Jeffrey Mandel did anything for the show or not. I meant to look it up on Memory Alpha, and then let's see, let's see.
Well, Brian, while you're looking up that, I'm just going to real quick read the last comment I was going to share today, but it is from Snoopy McQueen, who just simply said, "Love your show, Tex-Trek. Look forward to your show every week." Snoopy, just wanted to say thank you so much. Hadn't seen you in the comments for a while, but glad to know that you are still keeping up with us, and we do love hearing from you. Brian, what did you find out?
Okay, I was right. I had this vague instinct, but I wasn't sure about it. Yeah, he worked on it. He ended up working on a bunch of Star Trek. He was production artist and designer, scenic artist for Insurrection and seasons 6 and 7 of Voyager. Worked as a production designer for season 1 of Enterprise, and was a production assistant in the art department for Deep Space Nine in 1994. Also was involved in the production of Generations, and was apparently involved in Star Trek 09 as well behind the scenes. So yes, he ended up going from making Fanon back in 1980 to being right up there on the big screen. I think he did the Star Trek medical manual, and now that I think about it, and he drew schematics of the insides of a bunch of the aliens from TOS, and several of those showed up on Deep Space Nine on the screens there, as I recall. I think that was also Jeffrey Mandel who did that. So yeah, he was, yeah. So it's not all that surprising now that I've seen this, that he managed to get his Prime Directive canonized, but good for him.
Yeah. So, RBA 1225, I hope that, answers your question. And yeah, the stuff in those books is not technically considered canon until it is on screen, and then it is officially canon. So yeah, from fanon to canon.
Yes. Though I tend to use it in my role-playing games because I figure if Mandel thought it was still good enough to be used on the show, then it's probably still good enough for my game.
Well, that's going to be it for the show this week, but we'll of course be back next week for Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episode 9. And then after that, we'll have Episode 10. And then after that, we'll go back to the 32nd century and hang out with the disco people for a little bit. And then we'll get to be back with Admiral Picard, and then we get to go hang out with Pike on the Enterprise. So going to be a really, really exciting year. Really, really exciting couple of months. Really busy for us, but going to be tons of fun. However, there's going to be more fun later tonight on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel. If anyone wants to go over there, we have a special guest host. I'm going to appear. Starfleet Boy himself, I know, will be there a little bit. He's dying to talk about this Star Trek Picard Season 2 trailer that dropped today. Speaking of which, if you're checking us out live today on Friday, then you should be reminded tomorrow, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Central, come back to the Tex-Trek channel. We are going to do an analysis of the new trailer and let you know what we think about it and what we expect to see, what we hope to see, what we think we'll see. So that's going to be fun as well. Otherwise, though, everyone, take care. We will be back next week. And as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.